Today on Rum Boats, we're going to start getting our flooring ready to go in before we lay our coring up, which has to go in before the floor. But I'm going to start getting this ready to go, and it's kind of tricky. So right here, the seat box is going to be, and that's basically going to be 2 stringers, and then I'll cap it and glass it all in. And the front one will come up about 2 inches from the bottom of the tunnel here, and the back one will come up about 4 inches. We get a little angle for our seat box that we can attach seats to. And those stringers will run all through here. So the front piece of floor is the most difficult. The rear ones coming up to this stringer are pretty easy. We just make a template, jam them down in there after they're glassed up. The front bit though is concaved, and I need this to actually be laminated to this tunnel because that's what's holding it in and giving everything structure, and we don't want air and stuff. And then it's got to kind of follow this. So if you see this plane, well, this isn't going to want to go in there very well. So I'm going to keep scribing this down and sort of make this somehow close to this, and maybe I can lift this up a little bit until these are close to even. Then finish my template with a piece like so and like so, and then I can put out a bit of flooring. So that center piece, we're using HoneyComb or plas-core. I don't remember what brand it is that they hooked me up with. They gave me one piece of this flexible stuff that's made to be contourable so that it can actually go into spaces like what I'm trying to do. And then the rest of it is just sheets like this. Don't really weigh anything. You rely on the glass for rigidity and the plas-core for your impact strength. Obviously the glass will add to that as well. But this is somewhat flexible, so until you fiberglass it. So I should be able to accomplish this. Now, butting 2 pieces and glassing them together does not create a weak spot, or so I'm told. You're relying on the glass, and it's perfectly acceptable. Even out here I could have it in the void according to the fine gentleman at Express Composites who hooked me up with this. So my plan is to template that, get that piece laid in here, and sort of add some various things to weight it down so it holds the shape and is tight to the bottom here on the top of the tunnel. And then with some weights on it, I'll glass up as much as I can. And once it's fiberglassed, it will hold its shape. So after I get both sides in, and this sort of glassed up and the seam done, and it wants to hold its shape and will stay flat to this, I can take my weights off. While it's still in the boat, I'll add another layer of 1808 over top of everything there. And then it'll hold its shape real well for me. I can take it out, flip it over, add a couple layers of glass to the back, and it'll be ready to slap in, I think. I've talked to a few people about doing something like this, and no one had a really good plan, and my plan seemed to them to be reasonable and about the only way to do it, short of adding a stringer system to this whole boat and raising the level of the floor, which I really don't want to do because you already are pretty tight in here. It's not a big boat. So I'm going to keep going on this template and get a piece of this guy cut up to go in one side. I got to be careful because I only have 2 sheets of this, so I have to take one off one sheet, one off the other sheet, and plan this out well, try not to screw it up. Now this material is actually pretty cheap. It's 1/2 inch, and it's cheaper than 1/2 inch marine grade plywood, but you do lose a bit doing all the fiberglass you have to add to it. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes. I think this is flexible enough, even if my plane isn't exactly correct, that once I kind of have it set on the sides here and it's holding itself in place, I can really weight this down and make sure it's tight to the top of the tunnel. Add something out here to keep its shape the way I want it, add some glass, and then it will stay that way. We'll find out. All right, it's a moment of truth here. I've measured from the transom up and as best I could from the peak back, and we're within a 1/16 from this side to that side, front to back, and I've hot glued my template here. Now I have a little tiny bit where I need to kind of round this piece, but before I finalize my template and cut these edges and cut that away so I can trace the whole thing onto my honeycomb, I want to make sure that I really squared this up and I actually did a good job, because if I did this correctly, I should be able to flip this template to the other side and it should land right about in this groove here and at the same height up here and remain square, and it should just fit. Both sides should be exactly the same, assuming that I've cradled this boat properly. I've lined this up and squared it properly, and done the same with my template. So those are a lot of assumptions, and this isn't the most precise thing in the universe, but it needs to be fairly precise. So let's see if it works. I'll just cut 2 of the exact same pieces and be able to build my floor here. Would you look at that? That lands right in the middle like it oughta. It's tight. Well, there's a tiny gapper there, which I don't know. But there's no gaps here. We're all real square. This lands right in that groove like it's meant to. And when it was flipped, this piece would have hit there, so it's pretty well perfect. Oh-wee. So we got a little gapper right there. Oh, that's the only thing right there. And then that would fix that. Right? So we're just a tiny bit twisted, but really that's quite good. Yeah, I think this is going to work. Let's take our measurements on this side again and just make sure. And these aren't going to quite be exact because the tabbing and such there. It should be just shy of 80. Yeah, 79.7. And then if we poke it there, 79.7. I almost can't believe it. I really wasn't sure this was going to work out so well, but I think it is. I think my theory of getting those 2 pieces cut, setting them in here, adding whatever I can to put weights in to make this contour what I need it to do, and come up here, then glassing as much as I can, followed by glassing the whole thing to make it hold its shape. This is actually going to work. Look at that though, it fits. What a wonderful material. This is going to work out so well. This front piece flooring is actually working out quite well for me here. We're just about ready to get into it. What I've got to do though is put a couple little things to weight some areas down. I'll grab the camera and show you, so that I can make this be exactly the shape I want it to be. And conform correctly so it'll laminate well to the top of the tunnel. So this centerpiece is contourable, and one of the grooves I've got in the center here. So I have to kind of add a bit of weight right up front to make sure that once I glass this and I can't change the shape of it, it's going to lay down flat. Then I need to make sure that these edges stay tight to each other, but also that they're tight to the tunnel of the boat. Again, so here we've got a little bit of gappage, so this has got to get weighted down and that's got to get weighted down. So my thinking, I'm going to cut a piece of chop strand that's the full size of this. Then add a couple weights. I mean, it doesn't take much, maybe a couple coffee mugs. I got this lift ring, whatever I got around that I can make work here. So this will be just the shape I need it to be. Looks kind of cool, right? Lay my chop strand up and then cut around those weights and keep the pieces. And once I've got just that layer on there, it should be rigid enough to hold the shape. I can add the other pieces of chop strand and put 2 layers of 1808 over top of it. Then it'll be rigid enough for me to pull out of the boat, a couple layers of 1808 on the back side, and away we go. I'll be able to laminate it in. I got to do my coring first, but the transom's done. Super transom is pretty legit. And yeah, I get the coring in the bottom, the floor can get laminated, and boy, we're on our way to flipping this thing over. Well, I just got all ready to start this next bit of my front piece of floor here, and I've got a flickering light. It's really irritating, but I'm going to go ahead and lay this. So the second piece of my 1808 that's going over top of this, I'm going to use this sheet to mark, and I'm going to oversize it just a bit. Just be sure that we're all covered and nice and even and really ready to rock and roll with making this thing pretty as well, because this is my floor. So I'm gonna have all of my pieces ready here before I start laminating anything. But what I did is cut this one, first one, this piece here, fairly tight to the edges. And the second one will be a little big, and then we'll just sand that away before we actually install this. Perfect doesn't exist, even though I sure seem to be seeking it. It's just not a reality. I know that, but if I can try, I'll try. This is a very interesting layup and piece of flooring. And really just an interesting boat in general. Everything is sort of crazy and lightweight, and so we're adding to that by using this honeycomb for the flooring rather than the plywood that they used previously, and just keeping with the theme of what in the heck is that? It's pretty well one of a kind thing we've got going here. So I'm gonna just mark this whole edge, oops, just barely wide, because I don't want to have a ton of grinding and sanding. This is going to be a lip all the way around. One final thing of note here, this is not square, so I want to label the first piece that's smaller, and the front, and port or starboard, you know, make sure I don't put this in wrong, just the front's enough on here, and label the bottom one. And so I'll cut this, and this will be number 1. The front will go this way. This would be the port side. And this is the starboard side. Cool, now we can cut the second piece, label that, then we'll roll these up, remove them, and start laying up the chop strand. We've got the front piece flooring here. laminated on the top. It's actually got a layer of chopped strand and then 2 layers of 1808. And while the second layer was drying on there, I templated my next pieces of flooring. This has to be 2 pieces because this is about 6 feet side to side, and this first piece is 4 feet wide, and of course the sheets come in 4 by 8. So I've taken a level from the top of the tunnel here into the sides of the boat, and I marked a line, and that's where the flooring will land on the sides. Now that the template's made, I've got to take it out of the boat, put it on my flooring, trace it, cut it, put it into the boat, and what I'm going to do is just like the front one, I'll take and put both pieces in here and laminate them together so they're just one piece, put both layers on the top, then I can flip it over and do the back side. Should be a nice strong HoneyComb floor. Making sure everything is straight and true front to back, that I have enough area for a bilge. So if I wanted to put a battery back in here, I could, and you could put a custom fuel tank in this entire area that was huge, that even went down into the sponsons, whatever. But the flooring does go further back than the top of the cap, which comes up to about here. So I think it's pretty good. We'll go ahead and start getting the floor laid up.